So why do my garden beds look like they're covered in army camouflage? I'm going to tell you guys today what's different about gardening at high elevations and some tips that are going to help you grow better vegetables. Well, hey folks, it's Amy from Colorado Mountain Living, and if you're new to our channel, you might not know that we live up here at over 9,000 feet in elevation. In fact, our elevation of our garden beds is 9,350 feet. So that's technically high elevation gardening, and there's some special circumstances. If you've been around and are familiar with our channel, you know that we've had our challenges getting things to grow in our garden. And I'm going to show you a technique that was suggested to me from a viewer that's going to help with gardening at high altitudes to get better yield and more vegetables. So one thing I want to show you behind me is what our vegetable garden is looking like right now. This is one of our garden beds where I planted just a few things, and some of the stuff that's in here came up all by itself, like this giant yarrow plant. But I did plant some kale and I did plant a zucchini. And to let you guys know, I bought this zucchini plant about 3 weeks ago, maybe even 4 weeks ago, and it has barely grown. Here's my hand for comparison. If you guys are familiar with growing zucchini, you know how gigantic these plants get in a short period of time. What is going on? Why is this not growing? Here's the kale that I bought also 3 weeks ago, the same time I bought the zucchini. It's about the same size. Maybe there's just a few more leaves on it. Same with the sister kale over in this corner. And by comparison, the wild yarrow that I didn't even plant is more than 4 times the size of everything else. It's definitely concerning, right? I mean, what is going on here? Why are the plants that I bought not growing? Why is the natural stuff taking off like crazy? And it has to do with, what naturally grows at high altitude. So with yarrow plant, it doesn't require a lot of water and it's used to the strong sun. So one of the things that's different about gardening at high altitudes is that the sun is very strong and can actually dwarf your plants. And that's what I think is going on with the zucchini and the kale, is that the strong sun is keeping these plants really dwarfed, not letting them grow. Whereas the yarrow is acclimated to high altitude, high intense sun. And so naturally, because it grows here, it's not having any problems at all. In fact, it's the biggest yarrow on our property, the one that's in the garden bed. And that's just because it has nothing else to compete with. Plenty of weeding going on. I do have some garlic chives. I do have some other things that are coming up that I think are just plants and wildflowers. But I want to fix the solution because I want to have some zucchini this summer. Let me show you my other garden bed. Over here, I've got things I planted by seed, and I've got 3 different items here. One is radishes. I've got 4 rows of radishes, and then we hop over to 3 rows of arugula, and then 2 rows of a bok choy, which is called gai choy. Now, it looks like a rabbit got in here, but that's actually from me harvesting some of this arugula because, let me show you this plant. The arugula was bolting. In fact, you can see the bud right here. This is a plant that's going right to seed because of the hot sun. And over here, there's a few more that I didn't pick, but they were just getting leggy and woody and just going right into a flower without giving me a whole lot of leaf. So I went through yesterday and trimmed them all down. I picked them all off, hoping that they would bush out because I don't want my growing season to be over just yet. We just started. I planted all of these seeds the very first weekend of June. I think it was June 1st actually. So all these were seeds 6 weeks ago. And if you look at bok choy, and this is gai choy, it's a little bit smaller, but it's supposed to be a bigger plant than this. So everything was staying very mini, very, very small, but shooting up a flower and, like I said, going to seed. So the solution is a shade cover. But what I've used in the past, a floating row cover, it's a white sort of flimsy material. It lets the sun seep through, but it does not stay on very easily. We get a lot of wind up here, and I've lost more than one floating row cover blown right off. Even when I weigh it down with rocks or rebar, they always seem to catch the wind and blow away. In fact, there might still be one way up in the trees from a couple of years ago when it just blew away into the woods and it got caught in a tree. So I kind of gave up on the floating row covers because I just couldn't seem to secure them. But I got an awesome tip from a viewer on one of our old videos about growing at high altitude. So let me show you guys a solution that is going to be awesome. I really hope it's going to work out for us. So the viewer tip was suggesting to use snow fencing as a row cover because of the holes in it, and a little bit more rugged than the flimsy floating row covers that are meshy and they rip and they tear and they blow away. These can really be hammered into place, so to say, and they're a little heavier. They don't get caught by the wind because of the holes in them, unless you're talking about gale force winds, because this snow fencing did fail us when we had used it for snow fencing. We had it along our property line, along the driveway, and the strong winds ended up ripping some of the plastic. But for the summertime, our winds usually aren't that strong, so I'm going to give it a try putting it over our garden beds to provide some shade. So the only thing I have to do left is get some stakes in there because I don't want it smothering my plants. So I'm going to get some stakes, and then I'm going to use some gardening cups or old buckets. I'm sure you've got some kicking around to put on top of the stakes so the stakes don't go through the holes. But I like to get a few radishes before I put those covers on because they are so good right now. Some of these radishes, they hadn't really formed a bulb yet, and I think they grew more leaves than anything, but some of them did, and here's a little one. So nice purple radish, that's going to be delicious, nice and peppery. If you're looking to jazz up your salad, adding some radishes definitely can fit the bill. So the other thing that's been going on this summer for gardening is we've had a lot of rain. Believe it or not, we've had more rain than I recall in the last 5 years in the summertime being in Colorado. Now, that's not every area of Colorado, just unique to our scenario up here in Gilpin County. In fact, if I spin the camera around, you can see there's definitely some storm clouds coming in. Every day this week, we have a 50% chance of rain or greater, and it usually comes through in the afternoon, so hopefully I can get this video done before I get dumped on. But it's been one of the reasons why it's slowed down some of our building on the shed, because we're only getting half days to work because of the rainstorms. So that's been a nice blessing for our gardens. I think that's why so many of these greens have sort of come up, but it's the hot temperatures and that strong sun that's really been the negative factor. So I'm gonna solve it right now. I'm gonna go get some stakes and put up this fencing, and we'll see what happens. And here's the shed we're working on. You might be following this project. About almost halfway done there on the roof. There is a little bit of a delay even besides the rain. I'm going to share that later this weekend. Sort of a secret Brian's been keeping why the shed is taking a while, but this is going to be great storage for us. Can't wait to finish that up. Oh, here we are, pile of sticks. So I'm going to get about 5, 6 stakes here. Okay, so step one is I'm going to plop some stakes in here, and then I'm going to cover the stake with one of those garden containers. I know you got a bunch of these guys hanging around because I don't want the stakes to pop through the holes in the mesh, in the snow fencing. So stakes first, then put the lids on. Now, I'm probably use some tall stakes on this one just because I got that yarrow plant. And luckily with a garden bed, I don't need necessarily to have a super pointy stake. Just gonna hammer it in here with this, with my tool, which is over here. All right, it's not my best tool, but it's what I have. So what I'm gonna do is put some tall stakes on the end. All right, that one's in there. Put this other tall stake on this end. Luckily, I don't have a ton of stuff in this garden, so there's plenty of room for all this stuff. Let's got my 2 major stakes in. I'm going to put in some other stakes next to the vegetables so they got plenty of room. I also have the posts of the garden that are also going to help. Okay, now covering these. I already had one by my zucchini. Okay, now the fun part is putting on the snow fencing. So, this part was a little bit awkward because it never was really as pretty as you want it to be. Do you see what happened here? There was a hole in my snow fencing, went right through. So, I'll pull that back through. That is where we had a tear. I'm going to put another layer on. This one isn't quite enough to fold back on itself, but I'm going to put another layer on because I want a little bit more shade than this. So I'm just going to put another layer on, okay? You guys are getting full demonstration of the wind up here. In fact, I'm going to put another stake on the edge of this and put it right here. Hold that into place. I'm going to drag it over from the side and flip it on top like that. A little easier than going the long way about it. All right, so a little bit of a house here. It's providing some shade. I'm not sure if it's 50% shade or 40% shade, but any amount of shade is definitely going to help with the stunting problem from the intense sun. So I'm going to do the other garden bed. All right, guys, so there you have it. High elevation row covers to help preserve your garden from sun burnout, provide a little bit of shade, and also something you can water through. Now, I've been using my pressure washer, not with the motor turned on, just a light mist here, but you can still water through this cover, which is amazing. You can still peek at your vegetables and see how they're growing without having to lift up the cover, and pretty wind resistant. Now, when the wind does pick up, you can secure your edges if you want to. So I put a stake through the mesh on purpose on these sides to hold them down. Now you can see the difference between a really tall cover that you're not going to get shade cover all the way down. So you might decide to put another piece lengthwise over the middle of it. If you were worried about the wind or even animals, you can keep animals out with this too, is you could tack down some nails on the corners to really keep critters out, keep the wind from picking it up. And what a great solution to help with that high altitude, high elevation gardening problem of too strong of a sun and dwarfed plants. All right, guys, we'll see you next time on Colorado Mountain Living with update on the shed, and give this video a thumbs up if you think you might try this. And thanks to our viewer that did suggest this back on the other video. I think it's a keeper. I think this is one that I'm really gonna use from here on out. Judging by these clouds, I don't think I need to water right now. I think I'm gonna take my little mini harvest of my radishes, go inside and have a little snack.